It's been 4 weeks since the first case of coronavirus was confirmed here in Connecticut. And as we know, Fairfield County has been hit the hardest by this virus. Joining me via Skype now is Representative Gail Lavielle, a Republican whose district covers parts of Wilton, Norwalk, and Westport. Representative Lavielle, welcome back to Face the Facts.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's good to be here.
Republicans sent a letter to Governor Lamont this week with a list of measures to provide relief for people and businesses during this crisis. They included getting nurses on the job as quickly as possible. How would that work?
It's really just an issue of people who are about to graduate. They have to take a test. It takes a long time to set up the test, then it takes a long time to grade the test. So it's a question of just speeding up all those procedures so that they can get right to work. It's not meant to be a particularly complicated administrative matter.
Thankfully,
it's really just efficiency.
So many people are volunteering at this point. That helps, but we could use all the manpower and woman power we can get. Also, you suggested creating a business interruption fund. What is that, and has the governor been receptive to that?
My experience with the governor in this particular crisis has been that he's open to all ideas. He has been very willing to consider anything that would, keep people at home and keep the people out on the front lines as safe as possible, and that would keep business owners as whole as we can. I'm not fully certain of the actual intricacies of the fund, but the important thing is that sometimes insurance doesn't cover businesses if they have an unexpected interruption where they really can't operate. There are only certain cases, and this is one where there's nothing they can do about it. If the government says you can't stay open, or if their business simply goes away because no one needs their type of service in this type of climate, then they have a problem, and we don't want them to close. We want to do everything we can so that when this period is over, whenever that is, they have a very smooth path to recovery. And that's the main issue.
And we know that's not going to be easy for so many small businesses here in Connecticut. Also, we know that you are on the Education Committee, and this is certainly, for all states, unprecedented time when it comes for schools and now everybody transitioning to distance learning. Do you have any concerns about having this distance learning in place for an extended period of time? Like, are there benchmarks we can see if students are progressing, to your knowledge?
Well, this is the first time, this has been done on such a large scale. And in fact, over the past several years, we've been trying to get legislation passed to allow distance learning just for, say, courses that aren't available in a particular student's school, to have virtual teaching. And that was very hard. But the minute this hit, there was a lot more receptivity to that. And, it is going to be for, maximum, I guess, a period of about 2.5 months. And for certain districts, it's very easy because the kids all have access to computers. They have them at home. They can just plug in. They can respect a fairly structured day. They're relying on philanthropy in some of the districts where that's not the case. And I know the Dalios have been very forthcoming in helping get computers to those students. It's a little bit difficult if you're trying to, give exams where they would normally be proctored. That's less clear. But I think some of the districts are actually trying to simulate a classroom setting as much as they possibly can. And how that'll be monitored, I think it's a little piecey right now. We'll see how it comes up in different districts, but I think we're going to learn a tremendous amount from this experience and see how we can use online learning to best effect in the future. It really is the first time.
Yeah, and considering it's so widespread, there's going to be a lot of data to be had. So what is it? I cannot imagine what it's like to be a legislator during this kind of time when you can't be at the Capitol. Is there anything that you believe can realistically get done in this shortened session?
Well, what we're doing mostly is helping our constituents and asking them what they need. I got a lot of responses from businesses. I got a lot of responses from medical workers who are asking for certain measures, nonprofits as well. So we talked to our constituents a lot. But in terms of legislation, it's tough. And I think the one thing I would say is we are in a short session. We have a 2-year budget in place. So were we to be voting on something, it would be a revision of that budget, which it's not as though we won't have a budget if we don't do something. We do have one. If, unsatisfactory or not, we have one. We got the bonding bill passed from last year before we left. And many, many, many of the measures that people want to pass aren't urgent. I'm not particularly worried about most of them. We do have certain things like school construction and land conveyance that are routine type bills that are supposed to be passed every year so that regular, ongoing, important work can continue to be done. It might be difficult to do that before the session closes, but that's the sort of thing they could call a special session for. I do think that in the light of this particular crisis, there may be some things that we find as time goes by and we understand the situation better, that there will be a legislation that people want to propose. And in that case, we might end up having to do it after session. If we do it before May 5th, we would have to do phone voting or something like that, and I'm not sure there's a lot of reception to that.
Speaking of voting, you recently announced that this is going to be your last term in the General Assembly. Did you decide this before the crisis, or did it play a role?
No, it didn't play a role at all. I've been planning this for about 3 years. I decided that 10 years would be a good time to stop. And I have a lot of other things that I'm very interested in that I have not gotten to do. I had a career before this. So there's you can't really do anything else much while you're doing this. And I wanted to give all my attention to this while I was doing it. But it's time for me to go back to some interests that I was pursuing in the past. And I'll be doing that when I stop. But it's been an amazing experience, I must say.
So speaking of experiencing this from a different vantage point, you live in Fairfield County, which of course, as we've reported, has been the hardest hit by this epidemic. What's it like where you are, the atmosphere? Do you see your neighbors, even if you're waving from a distance? What are they saying to you? Are they scared? What are the feelings you're getting?
Well, I think everybody's unsettled. There's no question about that. Everybody I talk to is either scared or unsettled in some way. We are fortunate in if you want to call them suburbs in Fairfield County, in that we have a lot of space. If we want to just go outside our house and walk up and down the street to get fresh air, we don't have to be close to anybody. And I ran into our next door neighbor the other day, and there's a low stone wall between us, and we stood on either side of the wall and talked from 10 feet away, and I think we stood there for an hour, and it was great. In a place like this, most people are able to stay home most of the time, and there's a lot of Zoom conversations online, a lot of Skype. I seem to be on the phone all day.
I bet.
But it's very different in the cities down here because they are really getting hit hard because it's denser. The space is simply more dense. And so people do have to be in circumstances often where they're running into other people. And so while in a couple of towns, the cases started off there and it looked like they were going to increase faster than anywhere else, but it turned out to be the cities that were getting the biggest increases.
So,
and
last question before we go. Obviously, with Fairfield County being hit the hardest, and this is a moving target for legislators all across the state, are we doing enough for the southwestern part of Connecticut right now to try to mitigate, do you think?
Well, that's a good question. It's hard to. it's hard to decipher exactly how the federal resources, Connecticut's going to get more than $2 billion from the federal government. Right now, the big rush is here. The big numbers of people going into hospitals and the big hospital workers who have to be on the front lines all the time and need protective equipment. But that is going to spread to other areas. And it may be that by the time all that gets here, the concentration will have moved east. I don't wish it on anybody, but that may be the trend. So I don't think anybody feels like they have everything that they need. And I know that the hospitals down here, the people who work there are absolutely amazing. I really don't have enough. I can't express how grateful I and everyone is. We're all very grateful to them, but they don't have enough protective equipment, and that's a serious issue. And I hope that we'll get there very soon.
And of course, we all do. Representative Lavielle, thank you for joining us on Face the Facts. Please stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Same to you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
This is Face the Facts with NBC Connecticut.